Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Erica Mittag, and I am the Community Development Coordinator with the Municipality of Clarington. Today, I am joining you from the Municipality of Clarington, which is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas and Chippewas of the Anishinaabe, known today as the Williams Treaties First Nations. Our work on these lands acknowledges their resilience and their longstanding contributions to the area now known as the Municipality of Clarington. I am grateful to the First Nations people for their care for and teachings about our earth. I ask you to think about the land from which you are joining and join me in honoring those teachings as we move forward in the spirit of reconciliation. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome members of the Canadian Council for Muslim Women, which is a national nonprofit organization committed to the empowerment, equality, and equity of Canadian Muslim women and girls. They have 16 chapters across Canada and are celebrating their 40th year this year. Congratulations. Kubra Mir is the president of the Council's Durham chapter, and she is joined tonight by Natalia and Miriam. We are also joined by Firdaus Ali, who is the National Project Manager for the D.A.R.E project. I look forward to the discussion and learning along with you tonight, and I will now turn the event over to Kubra. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you for the warm welcome. We're very excited to be able to present today. We are celebrating our 40th anniversary, and if for those who would like to say a few words, she is our national project coordinator, and we've done events all over Canada. So for those, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, just a big thank you to all our partners for coming together and making today happen, and also to our CCMW Durham chapter for leading us with yet another hopefully amazing presentation. So I represent CCMW National, and this is part of our digital anti-racism education project. We did receive funding from the government of Canada, which ended in March. But we continue to do these workshops as part of our commitment to anti-racism work. So without much ado, I hand it back to Kubra and the team to lead us tonight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So next slide, please. So who are we? So our chapter was started about 3 years ago. We have about over 60 members, and the focus of our chapter is to empower women with knowledge. Can you hear me? Give back to the local community and build a strong foundation for our youth. So like Erica mentioned earlier, I'm the president of this local chapter. And next slide, please. So today we have two guest speakers. We have the City of Oshawa Mayor Dan Carter and the Municipality of Clarington Mayor Adrian Foster. So I'm not sure if they're here yet. So maybe Erica would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Kubra. On behalf of the Municipality of Clarington, we are very happy to be able to partner and thankful for the opportunity to partner on this event and have these conversations with our community and learn together and be stronger together. So thank you very much to the Canadian Council for Muslim Women, the Durham chapter, for joining us here this evening and sharing with us. And I look forward to the presentation and the evening. And I believe we do have a message from Mayor Dan Carter.
Hi, everybody. It's Mayor Dan Carter for the great city of Oshawa. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of you for participating today. Of course, this Anti-Islamophobia community workshop is really important. Our partnership between Clarington Public Library and Oshawa Public Library will play an important part. You know, our community is becoming so diverse. These conversations are important, not only to educate ourselves, but equipping all of us to be ambassadors, to be able to make sure that others understand that our community is changing, and it gives us an eye into a world that we have never visited before, experiences that people have lived, dance that we have never seen, faith that we've never experienced, and some of the most tremendous food I've ever ate in my life. So enjoy today, and we thank you so much for being a part of this important workshop.
Oh, thank you, Erica. That was really well said. So he was elected in 2018, and I really was excited to see that he was involved. You know, his mission is for health and social services. That was a really nice presentation from him. So we'll just move forward. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I really like the fact that he mentioned food. That's what unites us all, it seems. All right. Okay, so my name is Kubra, and I'm the president of our local chapter. So a little bit about myself. My family came from India when I was 2 years old to Canada. I grew up in Cambridge, Ontario, so Southern Ontario. At the time, there were no other brown families. Forget about Muslim families. I was very unique. I was beaten up, bullied for being different looking. So this caused me to develop self-esteem issues, and I was very ashamed of my own culture and my faith. So, today I'm so thankful for CCMW for giving me this opportunity to talk about racism and cyberbullying. And we've been doing these workshops across Canada. And I would just like to mention this is our 10th workshop. We started off with one in December. This has been crazily popular. This is our 10th workshop. So thank you for everyone for allowing us to present today. And I would like to introduce you to Miriam and Natalia, my co-presenters for tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's taken the time to attend today. I'm so pleased to be here with all of you to share and discuss the information we'll be covering in today's presentation. To introduce myself, my name is Miriam, and I was born and brought up in Toronto. My parents also immigrated to Canada from India in the 1960s. I have an educational background in accounting and learning and development. I moved to Durham region about 16 years ago, lived in Whitby for a few years, moved to Ajax, lived there for about 10 years, and then came back to Whitby, and I've been here now 4 years. So I'm a proud Durham resident. Similar to Kubra, I also experienced racist attacks as a child, such as being called Paki, which at the time I wasn't sure what to think about. I didn't know what to think about it, except that I knew it was a verbal racist attack. It wasn't something nice. Funnily enough, the root word Pak means clean. So this teenager who was yelling this out to me obviously didn't know what this word actually meant, and used it as a derogatory term. Was he telling me I was clean? Or was he referencing someone who he thought was from Pakistan, perhaps, and putting me down because I'm brown and made me feel like I don't belong? As an adult, the racist attack that most stands out to me was after the 9/11 attacks. At the time, I was working at a retail store at the time, and an older gentleman came up to the register, and I went up to help him, and he asked if there was someone else to bring him through. And I said, yeah, I'm here. I'd be very happy to help you. And still not realizing that he didn't want me to help him for other reasons. It took me aback because then he started to attack me verbally, making it clear he didn't want someone like me helping him. And I was very visibly Muslim. And a colleague who noticed his hostile behavior and his ranting came up to support me and eventually handled that customer's transaction. I can never forget that feeling of being absolutely rattled and devastated at this direct attack on me, and realizing how the 9/11 incident had impacted not only myself, but for Muslims all over North America in particular. Being a CCMW member, I'm so honored to be able to be here to facilitate presentations such as this to combat racism and discrimination, and very happy to be here with all of you today. I'll hand off to Natalia now to introduce herself.
Oh, we can't hear you, Natalia.
Well, that would help if I unmuted
There
myself.
you go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Miriam, for handing it off. My name is Natalia. I migrated from Guyana, South America, 27 years ago. living in Durham for 18 out of those 27 years. Being a Muslim of East Indian descent, I've experienced racism on multiple levels based on not only my sex, height, color of my skin, and faith throughout my entire life. I have memories of being bullied in high school for being too tall, or in Canada, feeling uncomfortable when it comes up to faith and discussing it with others because of the perception everyone has on Islam and what Islam is. I am proud today to be part of this initiative to educate our community on anti-racism and cyberbullying while working towards eradicating hate of all forms. Next slide, please. So in today's session, we're looking at as part of the Hate to Healing campaign, CCMW launched an online counter speech campaign responding to online hate. Please visit our website at daretobeaware.ca to learn more about how Canadian Muslims are countering racism, hate, and Islamophobia online. Next slide, please. As part of the Digital Anti-Racism Education workshop, it builds on the success of the CCMW D.A.R.E project, which aimed at helping communities better understand how Islamophobia further marginalized racialized women and girls. CCMW continues to expand on its anti-racism work by offering Anti-Islamophobia 101 and Countering Cyberhate 101 workshops to communities across Canada. And this is what you're part of today. Next slide, please. Before we begin this session, we just have a few ground rules, just to make this a safe space for everyone that's here today. Please, let's acknowledge our multiple viewpoints and opinions. Let's own our intentions and impact, and reflect critically and respect everyone's viewpoint. Recognize our own privileges and honor the different experiences we bring to this space. Challenge with care and empathy. Next slide, please. Today's agenda, it's a packed agenda, so we're hoping for some interaction. Please feel free to interact with us when we open the forum for you. Share your experiences and what it is. Now, remember, there's a lot of material here. I ask everyone, let's be kind to ourselves. Some of it may be difficult to hear as well. There are 5 parts to it. What is Islamophobia? Gendered Islamophobia. Then we're looking at intersectional identities. Then we're going into countering cyber hate, both online and offline hate. And then we're going to look at individual and collective counter speech. This is where we'll look at strategies that we can use to counter hate. I'm now going to pass it off to the first part to Miriam, uncovering what is Islamophobia. Miriam?
Thank you, Natalia. All right, so let's begin with thinking about what is Islamophobia. To help us understand, we need to understand some of the myths and the facts pertaining to people's understanding of the faith. Next slide, please. Now, a common myth about Islam and Muslims is the fact that is that most Muslims are Arabs or most Arabs are Muslims, which is far from the reality. As you can see from the image on the screen, Muslims can be found from all over the world, from Europe, Africa, the Americas, the Middle East, and the largest population is found in the Asia-Pacific region at over 60%, as opposed to the Middle East at 20%. So very different from the perceived myth that we hear around us. So there's rich diversity in the Muslim world with various sects, races, and ethnicities. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to start off today with listening to an audio clip. To give you some background, this is an audio clip of a phone call that was received at the National Council of Canadian Muslims back in 2015 at the height of the Syrian refugee crisis and the controversy over the Niqab ban at citizenship votes. Now, as you listen to the call, I'd like you to reflect on how you feel as you listen to the call, make notes if you wish to share as well, and think about your own lived experiences of racism, discrimination, or microaggressions you may have faced. Can you please start the video or the audio, sorry?
Yes, good afternoon. Just calling to express our grave concern with allowing these Syrian Islamic Muslims into Canada. I believe that there is good people mixed in with the bad, but you always have to err on the side of caution. And we do not want not one Syrian refugee into Canada. And that whole Islam is a flawed religion, a dangerous religion. It is the only religion where terrorists come from. And I do not want that to be my future Canada. They can stay in their own country and live the way they want, wear their headdresses, wear their hijabs, and they can change laws in their own country. Our laws are based on Christian, Judeo-Christian values and morals and standards. And our family immigrated in the early 1900s. When they came here, they had to pick rock, dig roots, clear land. And you know, these here immigrants that come now, they come and they want a free car, a free house, handouts. These Syrians, they're coming here with nothing except their hands out, their mouths open, and just to be a drain on our society. This is taxpayer money, and I hope this dumb Trudeau listens to the Canadian people when we say no to refugees, these Syrians. There's lots of other refugees from a lot of parts of the world where there is no Muslims and no Islamic people that they can bring in and help from the Ukraine, from other parts of impoverished countries that would want to come here and adapt, not change our laws. You know that hijab and hairdressers? That's men made that up in that country. It's a sign of oppression. And when I see that as a white person, I see the woman is oppressed, is what I see. No to Syrian refugees. And for that fact, Muslims and Islamic people as well. We have enough of them. I'm starting to be that we feel like we're in their country. We're an immigrant, you know, here. There's so many of them everywhere you go. Stay in your own country, keep your beliefs, keep your religion. End of message. To delete this message, press.
So that was a packed message. The lady had quite a lot to say. I want to open it up here. Please feel free to unmute yourself. But let us know, how did that make you feel? What are your reactions? Have any of you experienced anything like this, being on the receiving end or other acts of racism and discrimination? Please feel free to share on the chat if you wish as well, or please speak up. You can just unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just want to share my experiences. I lived with an older lady in first year university, and she kicked me out. And this is the reason. She says, you people, you come here, you basically are taking from us, you don't contribute. And I looked at her. My father got a job in those days. He had many job offers, and he had a job within 2 days of arriving in Canada. We've always paid our taxes. But this woman said, oh, you're just a scourge. You're just taking from Canada. You don't give back. My family's here since Confederation. So she was British. So I was not good enough. But anyways, so this phone call always reminds me of what she said to me, because I never forgot that. I was only about 18 years old. So it's something that really impacts your life.
For sure,
So,
for sure. Thank you for sharing, Cobra. I also want to express some of the feelings I felt when I first heard this call. Something stood out at me, just kind of going back and tying into things we've just talked about, with her labeling that all Syrians are Muslims. As we saw in the earlier slide, there's great diversity when it comes to Muslims, and the myth that all Arab countries are Muslim only. Syria also has many Christians and Jews and other smaller ethnic communities, such as the Kurds. So to assume that all refugees were Muslim would be far from the truth. Anyone else? Please feel free. You can put in the chat as well if you don't want to speak up.
For me, I hate when people like try to speak up for everybody when she says, like, she's speaking up for all Christians.
Yes.
No, you're speaking for yourself. And then, like, how dare you when you're not even, like, you're an immigrant your own self. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you point the finger, how many fingers point back at you? And while you telling somebody else what to do, I guarantee you got all kinds of skeletons in your closet.
Right. I'm sorry, I can't.
Other people. Yeah. Huh? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. What's your name?
Shanette.
Shanette, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I appreciate that. Was there anything else you wanted to share? Or anyone else?
People like that who have, like the serial killers that live next door to them, the white people. Like,
that's true.
You blame it on every other ethnicity, but it's your own.
Anyone else?
Miriam, there's a chat. You can just look at the chat.
Marley H.
Oh, sorry.
There's
Marley.
Yeah, Marley.
Yeah, so Marley has, I felt disgusted at the assumption that immigrants are here for handouts, and that there were such openly racist comments about both the Muslim religion and Islamic countries. The commentary was so hateful, it made me feel sick to my stomach with all those incorrect assumptions. Thank you, Marley. I think many of us felt the same. So thank you for your comment.
I have heard, it's Natalia, I have heard this how many times now doing this, and it still gets to my core that there's still so much hatred in society, and taking it out, not even just Muslim, but just being an immigrant. And as Shanette stated, we're all immigrants here.
Exactly. The Aboriginals are the only originals, right?
Yeah.
So, and I can share that sentiment in another way. I'll pipe in here myself from my experiences. Just because I might be a different color or I dress a bit differently than you, it's like, go back to your country. It's like, where do you want me to go? Canada is my country. I was born here. And this is someone who is probably had immigrated and not born here themselves. So, I find that so ridiculous sometimes.
Mariam, I just want to add that a few people have asked us. So this call came to the NCCM, the National Council of Canadian Muslims, a couple of years ago.
Yes.
But then a few months ago, I was on CTV. We were talking about the Quebec teacher who was taken off the school for wearing a hijab. Her name was Fatima Anwar. So I was on CTV giving an interview, and the same lady called the CCMW office, and the call was picked up by Nuzha Jaffrey, who's our executive director. So it was the same rant, the same racist comments. Nuzhat tried to engage her and educate her, and she ended by telling Nuzhat that no, all Muslim women, you think you're liberated, but you are actually oppressed. You're not, you're not saying that, but you actually are. So even through the years, through the diversity that she may have seen, she has not changed her mindset. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you. That's very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, I just have one more thing to say. So I work for the university. So I actually had someone call me a few weeks ago, and she said, I went on a tour. My son got into the university, but all he could see there are Indians and Chinese people. Where are the Canadians? So obviously they cannot see me on the phone. They're American. And I get this, hopefully there's no Americans on the call. Nothing against Americans. I get this a lot from American people. I don't know why they're so racist. Anyway, so I said, you realize there are Indians and Chinese people born in Canada who are Canadian. And I said, only qualified people go to university. You cannot just pick and choose what ethnic background someone is. So, and she says, so what happens in September? Will he find these people? And I'm going, what do you want me to tell you? I don't know what to tell people when they have these conversations. So anyways, that was my very strange phone call. And this is nothing new. I get this quite a bit, and I always say, if someone's coming to university, they're qualified, and most international students pay 7 times what a Canadian would pay. So they're also very well off if they're coming to Canada. So we want them to come. They're bringing millions of dollars to our economy. So let them come. So anyways, I'll let you
Just
continue.
look at the positive of it, right?
That's
It's
what I say. Talk
unfortunate,
about the
yeah.
money. Give me the money.
Help our own economy.
Exactly.
For sure, for sure. Is there any other comments before I move on? Anything on the chat? No, there isn't. All right. Next slide, please. All right. So, as we also heard in the call, Muslim women are portrayed as being oppressed, and that the faith is based on misogyny and patriarchy, which is really far from the reality. Muslim women have their own rights and choices, and this misconception is contrary to our religious actual teachings and beliefs. We also heard in the call the claim that Islam is the only religion where terrorism comes from, which is far from the truth as well. When we hear of mass shootings or people, being attacked in public spaces, you may note, and ASCA just really take note that whenever these unfortunate news items come in, the terrorist suspect is never identified with color and faith being mentioned. But interestingly, when it happens to be a Muslim, it will always be mentioned that it was a Muslim terrorist. So you will see that stark contrast in the media, which we'll be talking a little bit more ahead. And as well, often criticisms of Islam and Muslims is preceded with weak caveats along the lines of course, not all Muslims are like this, but, which doesn't help the incorrect portrayal of Muslims. Next slide, please. All right. Now to go over some more myths versus reality of Islam and Muslims, let's go over some of the mentions here on the slide. You'll see that the faith is often portrayed as monolith when actually it's quite diverse, as we saw in an earlier slide. Muslims are inferior when in fact we have a long history and legacy of contributions to human civilization. And many Muslims play key roles in our own society, in Canadian society. Muslims can be seen or portrayed as being manipulative and or insincere and using their faith mainly for political, strategic, and military purposes, and so forth. Next slide, please. All right. So at this point, I'm just going to hand this off to Kubra, who will take care of the next few slides on the media and Islamophobia. There you go, Kubra.
Thank you very much, Miriam. That was very interesting information. So like Miriam was saying, so terrorist attacks, so for some reason, they receive 357% more coverage than those carried out by non-Muslims. So for example, if a shooting had happened in this, anywhere, the first thing, the word that jumps out is Muslim, right? If it's, anyways, we'll talk about more about this. But anyways, next slide, please. So so if you can please play this video. This is a comic relief treatment of racial profiling, right, as it plays out. So.
Our news media exists to help us get a sense of our communities and the world at large. It does this by looking at the infinite number of things that are happening around the globe and chooses what to report, how to report, and how much to report. This means that all media, even when it's just straight reporting of facts, is political. But Islamophobia informs our mainstream media, meaning that the picture it's creating is distorted. This image is one that reinforces unfair biases about Islam and Muslims. An academic study on Canadian mainstream media confirms that violent acts committed by Muslims get far more news coverage than violent acts by white supremacists and right-wing extremists, even though the latter have been responsible for more deaths. So even though Muslim political violence has taken only 2 lives in Canada since 1960, the media is giving us a different story, leaving us in Canada always worried about the next act of so-called jihadi terrorism. And it's not just in the amount of coverage, but the type of coverage. Take these two front pages of the Globe and Mail. On the left, taken the day after the Boston Marathon bombing, and on the right, the day after the Quebec mosque shooting. The Quebec mosque shooting happened in Canada and was more fatal than the Boston Marathon bombing. But the headlines would have you believe another story. And so our mainstream media doesn't just deliver us the facts, it also strongly influences how we feel about the facts. In this case, by suggesting that Muslim lives aren't as important as non-Muslim ones. Now, take this terrorism timeline put together by Global News after the Quebec mosque shooting. The only other incidents mentioned on there are ones by Muslims, including one that wasn't even carried out. The timeline doesn't include some more fatal acts of violence, like the murder of 3 RCMP officers by right-winger Justin Bork, or the murder of 14 women at l'École Polytechnique by Marc Lepine. So when people say that all terrorists are Muslim, it's because, well, we only call something terrorism if it was committed by Muslims. We rightly expect the mainstream media to be a truth teller. But Islamophobia and other biases mean that this isn't the case. Islamophobia in media leads us to overestimate the threat of Muslim violence and underestimate the threats against Muslims. This contributes to more Islamophobia. It's a vicious cycle. We need to rely on more honest sources of analysis and knowledge. At the same time, we also have to hold our mainstream media to account for perpetuating unfounded stereotypes about Muslims and Islam.
Thank you. So as we see, in addition to media portrayals, laws and policies that target Muslims play a huge part in systemic discriminations of Muslims in Canada. For example, these are two major laws. Bill C-51, it's called the Anti-Terrorism Act. It's a bill that was passed at the federal level by the Harper government on June 18, 2015. This law provides the Canadian government agencies with more access to private data. They use national security as an excuse to breach human rights. The law is perceived as anti-constitutional because it allows Muslims and others to be susceptible to racial profiling under the guise of public security. And the second one that's being mentioned here, Bill C-51. Sorry, I think I did reverse this. So B-21. So Bill 21 came in effect in Quebec. It was brought forward by the Coalition of Quebec. It bans public employees from wearing, religious symbols as hijab, niqabs, turbans in the workplace. So this would affect people like teachers, police officers, and judges. Okay, so next slide, please. So anyways, just to mention that those two laws are something that we are trying to work against to prevent that from happening. So what we've seen is a huge, surge of rising Islamophobia. So these are a few of the incidents. So on January 29, 6 Muslim men were shot dead in Quebec mosque. So these men had gone to prayer and never came home to their families. I find this one very, very sad that a space like a mosque, which is a church, would be invaded and that someone who goes to pray would not come home to their families. So anyways, so this has been called a national terrorist attack, right? And it's considered one of the worst mass murders in Canada. And then below, there's a picture of, this is a funeral. So Muhammad Aslam Zafis was fatally stabbed September 12th outside of International Muslim Organization Mosque in 2020. So that was very sad. And something that was really devastating was the London attack. So 3 generations of one family were killed on Islamophobic attack. in London, Ontario. This one is actually very scary because I actually walk in my neighborhood. I do not carry my ID, and this guy just basically ran over the family. They're wearing cultural clothing, which I often wear as well. So I could be, this could happen to me. So this is a very scary one, this London Family Act. And I know they're working to stop it, but this is a really bad thing to happen, right? And a 9-year-old, he's lost his family, so he's orphaned. So anyways, we're going to continue on with gendered Islamophobia, and Miriam's going to be leading that one.
Thank you very much, Kubra. I'm just going to kind of pipe up here on the last point that Kubra made regarding the London incident. Similar to Kubra, I usually walk every night with a buddy in the evenings. And when that incident happened, when that terror attack happened on that innocent family, it shook us up because I felt so unsafe in my own neighborhood, in my own community. I remember my friend and I, we just started then walking internally within our subdivision and not on the main street. And I think people, the reason I'm mentioning is this because I don't think, people really even realize the impact, even though that poor family was attacked, but how it impacts everyone of that faith, and feeling so unsafe in your own community. And, it still, it lingers in my mind. But yeah, it's a great impact. So I just wanted to mention that. All right, so I'm back. I wasn't gone for too long. So let's take a detailed look at gendered Islamophobia. Next slide, please. All right, now what I would like for you to think is, have any of you heard of the term gendered Islamophobia? Do you know what it means? Feel free to unmute yourself or share your thoughts. If you're not sure, you can even throw in a guess, that's fine. Any thoughts there? What is gendered Islamophobia? Anything? Any guesses?
maybe Islamophobia, but directed at someone because of also their gender.
Okay, very good guess. Anyone else before I move on? Oops, sorry guys, I just kind of mixed up my slide here. There we go.
There is one in the chat from
is the intersection of sexism and Islamophobia. Yeah, great idea there. Excellent. Thank you, Emily. All right. So some great thoughts there. So a more formal definition would be something along the lines of gendered Islamophobia consists of the ways the state utilizes gendered forms of violence to oppress, monitor, punish, maim, and control Muslim bodies. So what does that exactly mean? That's a mouthful. We'll play a video here now to help you understand what this means and how it plays out in more simple terms. Can you start the video, please?
Patriarchy is a global force, and there is no society with full gender equality. But the dominant representation of Muslim women is that they are especially oppressed by their religion and the men in their communities. This misrepresentation or stereotype is used to justify forms of violence that claim to save Muslim women, but harm them instead. This contradiction is known as gendered Islamophobia. For example, the most frequent victims of Islamophobic hate crimes in Canada are Muslim women. This is compounded for Black Muslim women who also experience anti-Black racism. And yet the media focuses almost exclusively on the persecution of Muslim women by their own communities. So-called honor crimes, which are extremely rare in North America, are heavily reported on. Incidents in which Muslim women have been attacked or killed with racist intent, however, receive much less attention. Academic research shows how North American media perpetuates the stereotype of the oppressed Muslim woman, while downplaying Muslim women's agency as well as violence against non-Muslim women. For instance, The Globe and Mail devoted more coverage to the tragic Shafia murder case alone than to the widespread problem of fatal violence against Canadian women as a whole. These stereotypes also underlie laws like Canada's Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices Act. This law adds extra punishments for certain so-called cultural practices stereotypically associated with Muslims, like so-called honor killings, forced marriage, and polygamy, even though these are already illegal in Canada. As legal experts know, this law actually makes women less safe. If they report their abuse, their family members might be criminalized or deported, and so they are more likely to stay silent. Niqab and Hijab bans similarly claim to protect Muslim women, but such bans violate Muslim women's freedom to choose what they wear. They also lead to further stigmatization and marginalization of Muslim women by preventing their full economic and social participation. Our foreign policy is also shaped by gendered Islamophobia, like when politicians justified the war in Afghanistan as a mission to save Muslim women. Of course, women aren't actually liberated by the destruction of their societies. Resisting gendered Islamophobia means recognizing that Muslim women are not passive victims waiting to be saved, but that, like women everywhere, Muslim women also resist the violence and oppression they experience. It means recognizing that Islam is, for many women, a resource for liberation. Resisting gendered Islamophobia means always going back to a fundamental feminist principle. Listen to what Muslim women themselves are saying about the clothes they wear, about the violence they experience, and about the forms of solidarity they need.
Thank you. So as you can see from the video, gendered Islamophobia speaks to anti-Muslim racism that is rooted in gender stereotypes about Islam and Muslim women. The video is an eye-opener as it addresses a common misconception we spoke about earlier, that Muslim women are oppressed and need to be saved or liberated, when in actuality, by banning our right to choice, we are actually being oppressed. Next slide, please. All right, to recap, let's just do a quick review of the various ways Islamophobia can play out. As we've seen so far in the presentation, it plays out in many ways, such as microaggressions, stereotyping, exclusion, verbal abuse and threats, online harassment, sexual assault, and physical violence. Next slide, please. So let's dive in a bit deeper to understand some of the microaggressions, which are the slights, the innuendos, and indignities that are deeply rooted in prejudices and biases. Microaggressions can be defined as the daily slights, indignities, put-downs, or insults that can be verbal or nonverbal that portray hostility or bias towards a group of individuals. Microaggressions directed at Muslim women in particular, they're often rooted in harmful stereotypes about Muslims in general. Next slide, please. Right, so Islamophobia has, greatly impacted Muslim women. Reports of online hate speech and extremism have greatly increased in Canada, as Kubra mentioned earlier. All women, whether you're Muslim or not, face multiple forms of discrimination, such as racial or cultural discrimination. Women aged 18 to 24 in particular are most likely to experience severe forms of online abuse, including stalking, sexual harassment, and physical threats. Islamophobia is also one form of discrimination that contributes to Muslim women's experiences of vulnerability in public and online spaces. So let's watch a video here that depicts the effects of Islamophobia on Muslim women. This particular video focuses on a variety of situations faced by Muslim women in Edmonton, Alberta, but these same types of acts are being carried out all over Canada. If you can start the video, please.
I live and work in Amiskwati, Waskaikan, colonially known as Edmonton, which is Treaty 6 territory. And over the last few weeks, we have had a rash of violence against racialized Muslim women in particular, women who wear hijabs, Black Muslim women, and the violence has been steadily escalating. And so I've had a lot of people ask me how I'm doing, how the women that I know are doing, how our community, our ummah is doing. And most days, I'm finding that I just don't have the words. I don't have enough words or the right words to describe what we're going through. I'm finding, though, that often the first word that comes out is exhausted. The word that often comes next is actually anger. The kind of anger that comes from having to curtail our lives, from having to be constantly vigilant, from having to take self-defense classes or carry bear spray just to walk down the street, to have to take pictures of what you're wearing and where you're going so that people know who you are and where you are just in case something happens. And there's also fear and horror and shock. And under it all, there is a deep pain, a sadness that wears us down to the bone. It hurts to know that it doesn't matter, that Muslims have been on this land as far back as 1851, our first census, probably even longer.
I'm a Muslim woman born and raised here in Edmonton, Alberta. The recent assaults to our Muslim community all over Canada, and particularly here in Alberta, have been heartbreaking and despicable acts of anti-Muslim hate. What did these events mean to me? It meant that despite being born and raised here, speaking the language, I will always be different and made to feel different because of my faith and the color of my skin. I feel disappointed at the non-BIPOC community around me who continue to turn a blind eye to their racialized and discriminated friends and colleagues. Being raised in Canada has been a blessing in so many ways. Our family coming here for a better and brighter future for their children. In that process somewhere, we shed our layers of intersecting identities, of being Muslim, of being women, being Pakistani, being brown-skinned, and being multilingual. And often it's to make ourselves more palatable to our friends, our peers, and our colleagues. And for what purpose? We belong to a rich, vibrant, and beautiful tradition and faith that makes us an intricate and diverse community. My message to all those who want to help and seek to be allies, I ask them to listen and to center those voices who continue to be ignored and misrepresented. Allyship comes from humility in hearing others and having grace and compassion for the struggle of others. Respect as an ally, it's earned through action and amplification of these voices.
We are a woman-centered, intersectional, and collaborative initiative made up of diverse Muslim women, and we provide culturally safe spaces and supports for Muslim women and girls. Sisters Dialogue was actually started in light of the ongoing Islamophobic attacks against Muslim women here in Edmonton. These attacks have been random, but one thing in particular is that they've been targeting our Black Muslim sisters as well as other racialized Muslim women. A lot of our work is centered around helping women work through the stress and the trauma. It is so hard when the very fact that your own existence is being hated, which is the basis of Islamophobia as it is, and we need to do more to center Muslim women's voices, because then it shows that we are heard and that we are seen. I really don't like it when people say that we are strong, or that we can work through this, or that we will prevail, or that we are resilient. The thing that's beautiful is that women are actually showing their vulnerability, because we're not okay, and it's okay to show that we're not okay. And with Sisters Dialogue and the women here in Edmonton, we're able to do that, and we're hoping that with us speaking up, that the leaders within our community and also outside our community will listen to us. Edmonton safer for everyone.
Islamic phobia is just one form of discrimination that jeopardizes mostly women, girls' safety in public and online spaces. A violent situation? Yes, you call the police. But what do you do when it's online? How do you deal with that? So many organizations are trying to help in response to this situation. The Canadian Council of Muslim Women started a digital anti-racism educational D.A.R.E project. We've got statements coming out from the government. We don't want just statements. We want actions. We want actions from all levels of government. Please take action now and stop these acts of hateful nature so women from all the walks of life can freely enjoy the freedom they deserve in accordance with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom.
Thank you. So as you saw from the video, as an example, Edmonton has seen a sharp rise in hate crimes and attacks on Black and other racialized Muslim women, which this video focuses on. Muslim women and girls from CCMW's Edmonton chapter have been at the center of advocacy, and they're mobilizing to keep themselves and all women safe in their communities. The quote that you see on the screen is what struck me the most personally when I first saw this video. It says, it's hard to know that your very existence is being hated. She goes on to say, there's a deep pain, a sadness that wears us down to the bone. And it hurts to know that it doesn't matter that Muslims have been on this land as far back as 1851. So that really resonated with me and hit home. And, it does hurt. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to stop here for a moment and have a group discussion on the, what things that we have covered so far. We've covered a lot right now. So I'd like to stop for a moment and ask you to think about all the various things that we have covered and discussed to date. I'd like you to think about and share if you or someone it has experienced Islamophobia, or were you ever discriminated against for being different or due to your gender? How did that make you feel? How did you deal with it? Other things to consider could be, what impact did this have on those around you? So please unmute yourself and feel free to share your thoughts. And of course, the chat is open as well. Any comments or thoughts, any personal experiences that you've experienced and you wish to share?
I guess I can start it off, Miriam.
Sure.
And then hopefully others can relate. Taking aside being Muslim, just being female. For me, I've been in the IT industry for over 21 years. As we know, that's a male-dominated industry. To get heard, you have to fight your way for you to be recognized or acknowledged that your contributions actually value or matter. You constantly hear, if you're passionate about something, colleagues saying, oh, you know it all, or you are too aggressive or too emotional, just by being female. They don't even know that I'm Muslim. Those are just some of
it's kind of the lack of respect, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a lack of respect, right? And I'm sure there are women here in this forum that have experienced in some form or the other this type of prejudice that we have as women. So then take that and put being Muslim, a visible Muslim, wearing a hijab, or people knowing that, add that layer on top of this and put yourselves in the shoe of a Muslim woman a woman that is trying to move forward within society.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia. That's true. I mean, as women, I think we experience so many different types of discrimination and prejudice and, you know, try to knock you down, so to speak. So it's quite unfortunate that we have to deal with those kinds of behaviors and thoughts around us in our society. Anyone else? Anyone, experience anything due to their color, their work environment, the race that they're from, how you dress or behave? It could be as simple as that. Someone doesn't like how you look, they attacked you. They didn't like, how you live. So it's simple as that. And, people think they have the right to express anything really openly and very negatively. I'd like to encourage our audience, to kind of share your thoughts and your own experiences, or if you have any comments on things that we have covered.
Yeah, I would just like to say in our presentation we did for Oshawa, one of the participants, what she mentioned is she had gone to a grocery store in Oshawa and there was a huge lineup, but nobody wanted to go to the cashier that was wearing hijab. So, the covering that, what Miriam is wearing, the head covering. So anyways, she said, okay, let me do something. So she walked over and spoke to her and put through her groceries, and immediately everyone else started following. So here's a woman, she's an advocate, right? She stepped up, she saw something wrong and she did it. But can you imagine if you're the employer, you're seeing that, people are not going to this girl, they're going to find a way to get rid of her. That's a sad reality of how employers work. If it was you, do you want to antagonize your clientele? Do you want to have someone out there that is not being, working technically? She was there willing to serve, but people didn't want to come to her. So anyways, I thought that was such a nice story that she, as a woman, went up, supported her and did something and was able to change it. So as I said, that was just a lovely story that I heard in one of our meetings.
Yeah, and I think that kind of brings up the point. As I said, there's a lot of material that we're covering today, but if you still have questions and you're intrigued by what Islam is or what it means to be a Muslim woman, feel free to approach anyone. Like if you see me on the street, you can say, oh, I think she's Muslim. I have no problem answering your questions. So please don't be intimidated. I think I speak on behalf of all Muslims. We'd be very happy that you actually approach us and talk to us. Communication is key. It's key to educating yourself, erasing misconceptions and things that are not true. How can we correct ourselves in our thinking if we don't try to educate ourselves? So please don't ever let hesitation or self-consciousness kind of stop you. If you are standing next to me in the line of the grocery store, I'd be more than happy to talk to you. So, and I think, as I said, Kubra, Natalia, and many other Muslims would do the same.
I see that Mike, Mike Counts has posted. So it's basically saying social hostilities involving religion. So it looks like I think what you're trying to say, correct me if I'm wrong, is that government restrictions have gone up.
Yeah.
Right. And that maybe, they've, it's been the same, but we're going to show you stats later on to show you that it has gone up. I'm not sure what kind of government restrictions we're talking about. The last few years with the pandemic, Canada, we've had severe restrictions. A lot of countries have not. The States, they haven't had the same types of restrictions, and then here. So anyways, if you want to clarify what you're trying to say there, Mike, that would be nice.
We also have a comment from Emily as we wait for Mike. Emily mentions that she took a job a while ago in tech and academia, and there was a faculty member who every time she came up with the solution to a problem, he would come to me and would ask me to find one of my male coworkers to help him instead of verifying the solution she had provided. She goes on to say, I've never experienced Islamophobia, but I've heard from other coworkers and other students about Islamophobia, especially gendered Islamophobia, which we talked about that they have. So they've encountered that in the classroom and the workplace. So thank you, Emily, for sharing that.
Hey, so this is Mike.
Hello, Mike.
The two links that I posted, one of them tracks the Pew Research statistics on government, what does it say? Government restrictions on religion by region. And the other one is social hostilities that are religious in nature by region. I think there's a couple of relationships that kind of track between the two charts. One is that high amounts of government restrictions on religion tend to correlate very closely with very large amounts of social hostilities that are religious in nature. And lower government restrictions seem like they correlate pretty reliably with lower amounts of social hostilities. I think we are seeing, and these figures basically go up to a point near the start of the pandemic. But I think we are seeing that there's a gradual increase in terms of the world average and in just about every region around the world. But one other thing I'll point out is that in the Americas, in that particular region, that line is pretty reliably the lowest one, both in terms of government restrictions and in terms of social hostilities that are religious in nature. Granted, both of those lines are tracking gradually upward, as are everyone else's lines. But no one is perfect. No one is really that close to perfect. But the Americas does seem to be the region that is doing the best in both of these categories. And that was pretty much the main thing I wanted to get across with those charts.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you can see Mike has provided the links as well that you can check out later. So interesting data there. All right. Is there anyone else who has any comments before we move on? I thank those who have contributed. It's great input and great dialogue.
Mariam, I just want to add that, Islamophobia or gender Islamophobia rarely acts on its own, like others have mentioned before, that it is accompanied by sexism, it's accompanied by ableism. So, a lot of things go into it, to make it more complex. Like we saw Ganiyat's video, as a Black Muslim woman and all the other attacks that we have seen in Edmonton and Calgary. So, just to let you know that it is kind of a vicious cycle that sometimes, impacts Islamophobia and the survivors of hate.
Yeah, it's quite a vicious, quite a vicious thing that we have to deal with. It's not as simple. It's not a simple remedy. There is no simple remedy, but with us all working together, that's how we can focus and target this hate and try to eradicate it and bring understanding. All right. I don't see anything else on the chat. Okay. Anyone else? Thank you for those. I appreciate that. All right. So we'll move on now. I'm going to hand this off to Natalia, and she'll be covering Islamophobia and intersectionality.
Thanks, Miriam. Excellent segue into Islamophobia and intersectionality. If we can go to the next slide, please. So when we talk about intersectionality, intersectionality is being defined as oppression that arises out of the combination of various oppressors with other and produce something unique and distinct from any one form of discrimination standing alone. Institutions don't often recognize intersectionality in addressing discrimination and various forms of Islamophobia. Islamophobia isn't a one-size-fits-all. It often intersects with other forms of discrimination, such as being Black or Indigenous Muslim, or even an LGBTQ Muslim. The lived experiences of Muslims with intersectional identities are often removed from conversations surrounding the Muslim experience. These individuals are more likely to suffer the negative effects of information sharing agreements between police and national security agents, since Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ individuals are disproportionately targeted by police information gathering and practices like carding. Next slide, please. Intersectionality is complex and a cumulative way which effects of multiple forms of discrimination is combined. It overlaps or intersects, especially in the experiences of marginalized individuals. Here's a nice quote from Kimberly Cronshaw on intersectionalities. Intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides, where it interlocks and intersects. It's not simply that there is a race problem here, a gender problem here, and a class or an LGBTQ problem there. Many times, that framework erases what happens to people who are subject to all of these things. Next slide, please. You look at intersectionalities of one intersectionality of being Black and Muslim. Black Muslims have a historic root within Canada Islamic history. The conversation of being Black and Muslim is an important one. It is important to note that the first Muslims arrived in North America were Black. Islamic history has its roots in Africa, but due to the lack of focus on these historical facts, Black Muslims feel that their identities continue to be erased due to the lack of knowledge and inclusion within conversations surrounding their Blackness and Muslimness. Knowledge and inclusion, as of 2016, there's 51,380 Blacks living in the Durham region, and it has the highest Black population percentage of any major city. Next slide, please. Gunat is a young woman from Alberta, both vocally and proud about her identity as a Black Muslim woman. She talks about the recent hate attacks on Black Muslim women in Edmonton and Calgary, and feels that the targeting of Muslims women need to stop. We've heard of Ganat earlier and her experiences that she shared with us. Next slide, please. Muslims with disabilities are often faced with dual challenges of being discriminated against for both Islamophobia and ableism. They are discriminated, their experiences too are unique as Muslims. Miriam's story is one that we have posted on the Dare to Be Aware website, where we have a number of videos recognizing the strength of storytelling. CCMW launched a unique Hate to Healing anti-hate campaign. In there, there's 15 videos of diverse Muslim women, girls, and non-binary individuals coming together to speak about their lived experiences on hate, racism, and Islamophobia. Miriam spoke up against hateful comments about Muslims and was saved from being attacked in a retaliation by people around her who witnessed the altercation. After the event, Miriam continued to feel afraid while she was out in public that something similar would happen and the outcome would be a lot more severe. Take a look at Miriam's story on the daretobeaware.ca Hate to Healing stories on Miriam. Next slide, please. Another intersectionality is being Muslim and an LGBTQI individual. They face homophobic and Islamophobia at the same time, from within and outside of their communities. Next slide. Then we look at intersectionality, intersectional identities of being Indigenous and Muslim. Being an Indigenous Muslim means experiencing both anti-Indigenous racism and Islamophobia simultaneously. Canadians operate and live on unceded Indigenous land. The First Nations never legally signed away their lands to the Crown or Canada. Indigenous individuals continue to experience systemic anti-Indigenous racism at the hands of the systems and institutions in power from ordinary citizens as well. Next slide, please. And we look at here, we're going to take a look at a visual summary of Islamophobia. You can see there covers a vast array of such issues, such as exclusion, violence, prejudice, and discrimination are just some of the examples of how Islamophobia can exist in various places within our society. Some examples of exclusion can be from politics and government, from laws that have been passed that we've covered previously, from employment and management. On the other hand, various forms of violence such as physical assaults, vandalizing of property, verbal abuse can be a perfect example of racism, which is also a form of Islamophobia. So when we think of Islamophobia, if you think of racism in general, Islamophobia is just another form of racism that's targeting Muslims. Next slide. So we've packed a lot in this series. I think we'll give everyone a 5-minute bio break, and then we will push forward to go to the last part of this presentation. So now is 7:45. I don't know, do we have time for a break or not?
Natalia, I suggest that we continue with the presentation because we just have 10-15 minutes to end, right? Like, if that's okay.
Is it there or does it end at 8:30?
Kubra?
You know, it ends at 8:30. Why don't we give everyone a few minutes? If anyone has a washroom break, you know, I drink too much.
Yeah,
Let's do a few
take
minutes
a
break.
5-minute break. Let's come back here at 7:50, 10 to 8, and we'll be able to go through the next 2 slides. And I hope everyone returns and is enjoying this session so far. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you were able to stretch your legs and get settled again. For us, we're on the last stretch of this session today. I'm going to hand it off to Kubra to cover offline and online hate within Canada.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate everyone coming back. I know this is a lot of material we're covering today, so we're very thankful for you for sticking with us. I hope you had a few minutes to grab a drink or go to the washroom. So what I'm going to be talking about is that there have been increases. These have not been very good increases. So with this first slide, so what they're saying is there has been a significant increase in hate crimes motivated by hatred based on religion, race, and ethnicity. So this is from 2017. And then in 2016 to 17, 32% increase of hate crimes targeting Blacks, Arabs, West Asians. And then in 2017, they're also talking about how there's been an increase towards hatred towards Muslims and Jewish people. So next slide, please. So cyber hate crimes in Canada. So cyber hate crimes are mostly or commonly target Muslims, 17%. And of all hate crimes, this is uttering 11%, and the solve rate. So do police actually solve these incidences? They're saying it's only 50%. So, so what they're also saying is that sometimes these crimes do not get reported, right? Next slide, please. So the definition of hate in Canada is hate incidents that are criminal offenses committed against a person or property or motivated in whole or part by bias, prejudice based on real perceived race, national, ethnic origin, language, color, religion, gender, age, mental and physical disability, sexual orientation, or any other similar factors. Next slide, please. So what this basically means, okay, so actually, next slide. So what they're saying is that there has been police reported hate crimes have increased 37% during the first part of the pandemic, and that this has increased mainly targeting race and ethnicity. Next slide, please. And so they're saying 62% of all police reported hate crimes were motivated by race and ethnicity. And we also see a spike in 2020. Next slide, please. And so what is, hate? So what they're saying, anyone who communicates statements in any public place incites hatred against any identifiable group where such indictment is leading to a breach of peace is guilty of an offense leading to imprisonment not exceeding 2 years. So basically what they're trying to tell you is there isn't any, we like to think that, the government has a clear-cut definition of crime, but they don't. The criminal code defines hatred, and this is not clearly laid out. And different levels of government, media, and even academia don't use the same standard, right? So this is so we're working with the ones from the Ontario Human Rights Commission. Next slide, please.
Kubra, there is someone with their hand up.
Oh, sorry, Azim, sorry.
Hand up.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Kubra. 2 slides behind, so you had some figures for the Ontario. I was just wondering, do we have something specific related to a city-wise breakdown?
No, not yet. So these ones actually are very new. I'm still learning these slides. They just came out with the census. So we probably will get more information. We actually don't have even stats yet for Durham. So hopefully we'll find out some more information. Maybe Natalia, do you know any information about these slides? Oh, sorry for those. I see that wrong.
Yes, Azim, I can just add that, Canada-wide, the 3 provinces that we know are really hit hard by hate and hate crimes is Ontario, BC, and Quebec. So, through the last 10 years, that has remained constant. But, there may be a stat scan, if you go on their website, may have more stats. But what we do is an overview, right? According to communities across Canada. So what we've also seen in the latest data that has been provided to us, if you look at the 300% jump against, the hate crimes against East and Southeast Asians, and that is totally COVID related. We have seen a lot of incidents, that have involved the East Asian community. So this is more an overview, but I urge you to go on the StatScan website. They may have more data that is segregated by provinces and territories as well.
Thank you.
I was just going to share as well, perhaps to like that's reported hate crimes as well, right? I'm sure there's a lot that's going that people aren't comfortable reporting, aren't aware how to report, so those aren't getting captured in the stats.
Erica, you make such a good point, because 2/3 of hate crimes are not reported. What you see are like the 1/3 that has been reported officially, but many go unreported due to many reasons,
Yeah.
mistrust in the police force, etc.
For sure. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to just look at, okay, so social media, this is a huge part of our life now. The two that we picked out are Facebook and Twitter, but obviously, there's so many other media sources, right? That, so anyways, according to, hate speech. So Facebook says anything is a direct attack on people based on what we call projected characteristics, race, ethnicity, national origin. So you sometimes see people who are banned from Facebook because they say something nasty. And again, Twitter is talking about you can't promote violence or threaten people based on race, ethnicity, even images. You can't use, like, for example, Nazism, or there are certain images that they don't want to be put on social media. So, so these are ways that they're looking after it. But and they're also saying there's things like a genre of music called hate rock, and so what this is music streaming sites try to remove such music that is not very nice, right? So a lot of like social media, YouTube, internet, try to prevent, and actually WhatsApp. These are all ways that hatred is spread. So they are trying to control what is happening and how images and hatred is being spread. So, and also we all know that Trump was famous for his Twitter, account comments. Anyways, next slide, please. So what we want to do is talk about how to spot fake news. So when you, especially, like if you're on social media, I'm constantly being, sent material. So, and it all looks real, some, like a cow born with 3 heads, is this real? I don't know. But anyways, what they're telling you is, how do you spot it? So what I would look out for is, if it has all caps, all capital letters, or something that's photoshopped, that's a big no-no, right? Having pop-ups, when those things come up on the side, those things are not very good, right? So what we want you to do is, when you get something, check the domain, meaning, the HTTPS, is it legitimate, right? So the ones that are fake would put like a com.co, right? And if you go to an unknown site, right, try to see if it's fake or not and see what comes up. Sometimes what you can do is Google it, right? And then, try to verify the story, right? And then find, and this is important too, get an authentic, source, media source. Don't go by these local little media places, because sometimes they're out promoting hatred. Check the date. This is something that social media does a lot. What they do is they take a picture from 4 or 5 years ago and then publish it again. So people think it's brand new information, but no, it's fake. It's been there for many years. Read past headlines, right? See what they have, and always check before you forward something, before you share it, check. And I shared this earlier, but I actually met a religious leader, and he had gone on the pilgrimage, what we call pilgrimage to Mecca. So when he was there, he was getting thousands of threats, from all over the world on Twitter. And then he found out that someone had taken his picture and said that he was part of a mosque in Dallas. So a church in Dallas, it was not even a real church. They took his image. He's never been to this place, even that they're talking about, but he was being threatened from people all over the world for not being nice. They were saying that there was some kind of natural storm and that he couldn't help like he wasn't letting people come into the mosque. So this, and he was a young guy, he was not even 30. And he was telling me this story, and it was, right in front of me, someone who's actually was a victim of fake news. And so anyways, just be careful on what you read, what you see. Don't always believe everything. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay, so again, this is a website that, it's written for empowering women, right? So it's on the bottom, it's HTTP, the website is there. And, it's good for finding out more tips on how you can control this. So you can do this on your own. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to pass it over to Natalia, and she's going to be taking our next part of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kubra. There's a lot to pack in. Now, the juicy part of this presentation. How do we look at helping or intervening when you notice a hate crime or someone experiencing Islamophobia, but take it into the context of not just Islamophobia. This part, we're going to give you a little bit of strategy that you can use on how to counter hate and how to counter hate speeches out there. There'll be some reference sites that you can go to do a little bit more research and investigation if you're looking for being an ally to assisting with hate. So November 25th marks International Day for Eliminating the Violence Against Women. 1 in 3 women and girls experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime, and approximately 70% of reported violent incidents committed against visible minorities occur within a public space. Nasreen from Ottawa was attacked on a bus and her hijab was pulled off. She avoided public spaces for months and stopped taking the bus. She also stopped wearing the hijab. This is a great shame in the Muslim community for those who take off their hijab. Women taking off their hijab may have experienced a hate crime or Islamophobia, and we should not judge them so harshly, says Nasreen, while recounting her experience and journey of the hope and resilience. Please visit the Dare to Be Aware #Hate to Healing Stories and take a view of Nasreen's recurrence and how she's combating racism. Next slide, please. Now, what is gender-based violence? It is a stereotype of abuse that women, girls, two-spirits, trans, and non-binary individuals are at the highest risk of experiencing. It may take physical or emotional forms, such as name-calling, hitting, pushing, blocking, stalking, criminal harassment, rape, even sexual assault, control, and manipulation. Many forms of this abuse are against the law. Anybody can be abused, no matter their background, identity, or circumstances. But women, girls, and gender diverse individuals are at highest risk for gender-based violence. Some are even higher risk due to the additional intersectionality and barriers they face. This includes women with disabilities, Indigenous women, racialized women, trans and non-binary individuals, and women who are homeless or underhoused. People facing abuse may not have access to services that meet their needs. Example, individuals living in rural or remote areas. According to Stats Canada 2021, in 2018, 44% of women reported experiencing some form of psychological, physical, or sexual violence by an intimate partner of their lifetime. Now let's take a look at Dr. Erin Saltzman on counter speech. Can you play the video?
I'm Dr. Erin Marie Saltzman, and I'm a senior researcher at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue in London. Well, we've come to a period where actually online and offline engagement are definitely linked together, but the way that that looks is obviously very different. So hate speech offline is very distinctive, whereas online hate speech becomes quite a big gray area. It's very hard to define. And also a lot more people can sometimes be incentivized to be more extreme online because they can have anonymous profiles. They feel like they're not having to say something in front of direct people. It feels more protected. So we do see more engagement in extremist rhetoric, sometimes online, that people would not necessarily say offline. Counter-speech is a term that's really only come about in the last few years. Just like counter-extremism as a sector, this is relatively new, especially for governments, but particularly for civil society. Counter-speech can also be called counter-narratives or even alternative narratives. Counter-speech doesn't necessarily mean that it's negative speech. What it means is any sort of pathway or route or project that is undermining extremist rhetoric. So that could be through a campaign, that could be offline through a protest or an initiative, it could be through a hashtag, and it's different types of ways of engaging and countering extremism online. Counter-speech, particularly now, is highly important because we're witnessing that the typical things that would work offline, such as censoring hate speech, editing out individuals, not allowing them to have public platform if they're hate preachers, people tend to find online platforms as a way of continuing this. And actually counter-speech is extremely effective when we get alternative voices engaging against extremism online, because the typical measures of trying to censor or filter extremist content simply aren't working. In essence, if you're using censorship, you're attacking a symptom instead of a cause. And also it's ineffective. We see the same video or same comment coming back over and over, and actually just countering that with credible voices, with civil society standing up against it, is much more powerful. So civil society has a crucial part to play in counter-extremism and in counter-speech online because they are the credible voice. A government voice or even the head of a tech sector is not actually what is credible. Peers are credible, former extremists, mothers, religious leaders all have a role to play and a very powerful voice. However, for a civil society individual, it can be quite intimidating to go and try to counter an extremist, which is not what I would ever ask anyone to do unless they really wanted to. I personally would not go on a KKK website and say, stop being racist. Actually, there's a lot of ways to engage in hashtags or be a part of larger movements that are really positive, that actually aren't directly attacking anything, but actually are just providing really positive alternatives that naturally undermine extremism. And everyone has a role to play in that.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what is counter speech? As we've heard Dr. Saltzman explanation of the term counter speech, which he used interchangeably with counter narrative and an alternate narrative. Let's consider another slightly different explanation of what counter speech is and how it works. In terms of counter speech refers to responses or content that is created to counter a range of extremism and hate speech, both online and offline. If we think of counter speech as a spectrum of possible ways to counter hate speech, a counter narrative is one tool within a spectrum that we can use to challenge the ideologies, narratives, and worldviews of racist or hateful messages. The purpose of counter-narrative, like the purpose of counter-speech in general, is to discredit, example, with facts or logic, deconstruct with humor, demystify with stories. We've defined counter speech and counter narratives. Now, let's try to understand it better by using the infographic on counter speech do's and don't from counterspeechtips.org, a tool for countering online hate and harassment without making things worse. So for those who are not able to see the writing on the slide, let's read the information on the panels. First one, every situation is different and counter speech does not always work. Sometimes people are determined to hurt and are convinced they are right. You can tie back into the voice call that we heard at the beginning of this session and the individual and the amount of hate that she spewed on that recording, and some number of years pass and she's called in and still spewing that hate message. And then you look at those times, it may be best when you come into contact with those individuals to best disengage or use other tactics. So use your best judgment. If you choose to engage, here are some of the tips for getting positive results. Next slide, please. Counter speech do's and don'ts before you start. Remember, protect yourself. Take steps to protect yourself from retaliation. For more information on that, please see the resources at iheartmob.org/tech. Think about how your identity, online or profiles, can be used against you. Remind yourself that behind each comment, no matter how hateful, is a human being. Treat them as you would want to be treated. It's also worth to keep in mind that it may also be a trolling bot. You can do a deep fake. Just remember to exercise your best judgment about what to pay attention to and what to ignore. And as Kubra had covered earlier, some tips on identifying those deep fakes or bots that are trolling the net. Think about what you want to accomplish. What message is it that you'd like to relay? Do you want to change the person's mind or how they post or tweet, or even stop them from attacking someone else? Change other people's minds or behavior. So think about what it is that the aim is that you're trying to accomplish here, what the goal is. Next slide, please. And then now we look at counter speech do's. Things you can try when you feel safe. Remember, first and foremost, stay calm. If you're upset, wait a bit before responding. Research the issue to check your facts to make sure you're not responding to fake news or disinformation. Ask questions as to why do you think that, or what do you mean, for the aggressor to expand on what it is that they're talking about. Refer to potential outcomes, like this can hurt someone. Label the comment, not the person, like that word comes from a racist stereotype. Don't say you're racist. Show empathy and connection with the target. Try humor. If your intent is kind and you're not mocking the person, humor can soften the exchange and attract others to show their support. Next slide, please. Counter speech don'ts. Do not label the individual, for example, calling them a bigot. Do not assume the person has bad intentions. Don't be hostile, insulting, or aggressive. It will escalate the conflict. Don't talk down to the person. It can shut down the communication. Don't nitpick or correct spelling or grammar. Use a civil tone. Link to the resources you want to correct false information. Don't silence the person with threats, social exclusion, or other punishments. If you're looking for more tips on this, please visit ihollaback.org, and they'll give you more in-depth information on how to counter hate. Next slide, please. Counter speech as an upstander instead of a bystander. From this graphic, you can see examples of how the 4 tactics can be used to respond when you witness hatred being expressed against someone either offline or online. Example for direct. Directly tell the perpetrator to stop. Ask the woman being targeted if she is okay or need help. Offer to walk or sit with the individual. Stop a perpetrator from committing violence against a Muslim woman. Examples of distract. Interrupt the situation by distracting the perpetrator. Get him or her to look away or think about something different. Change his or her focus. Interpret the situation by talking to the Muslim woman. Talk to her in a way that takes power away from what the perpetrator is trying to do. For example, ask what book or movies she likes, or try to just engage in a conversation of some sort. I can give you an example of one time I was on the TTC and I witnessed a situation where there was a male aggressor to a female Muslim hijabi, where she was threatened, where he was standing over her in a domineering fashion and having words with her. And she was very quiet and in her space trying to protect herself. And I stepped up and I went and I sat beside her to put distance between her and the perpetrator. And then I started engaging her in conversation. After that encounter, he walked away, looked sternly at the both of us, and just stepped back, and his focus got changed to something else. Delegate. Delegate means ask for support from other people in the area. If, for example, if there is a situation that you see you cannot intervene with or you feel unsafe intervening with, if you're on a bus, reach out to the driver of the bus or a teacher in school, or if you're at a mall or somewhere where there's a security guard, engage somebody of authority and have them do the intervening on your behalf. At least you just didn't stand by to see whatever's going on occur. You actually reached out for help. That's also a part, an example of being an upstander instead of being a bystander, because a bystander is just sitting there looking at the situation and letting it pass by as if it doesn't have any impact on you. And then there's delay. The first 3 Ds are not possible within the situation. You have the delay response. Then you can follow up after the incident and ask her, is she okay? Follow up after the incident and offer supportive resources or whatever sort of assistance that you may be able to advise. Next slide, please. Also, next slide. Another important issue for us to keep in mind is the importance of documentation. It is very important for us as upstanders to document what we have witnessed in the situation. For example, perspective on individuals documenting, such as George Floyd's brutality and murder, was on video that was recorded by a bystander. As a result of this recording, it changed the outcome of that case. It changed our views of what this is. Next slide, please. So if you're feeling like you could use more information and also step-by-step guides, there are a number of free manuals online, as well as some campaign development tools. Here's one of them, which can be found in campaigntoolkit.org. It's managed by the Institute of Strategic Dialogue and founded by the founding members of the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism. This includes Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Twitter. It also has resources for educating, enabling, and empowering activists and community organizations as we mobilize to countering hate and to promote community cohesion, inclusion, and tolerance. It provides step-by-step guides as well as resources from leading technology companies and civil society. Now, next slide, please. I'm going to call to action that everyone that's here today. Think of how you will continue to increase your understanding of hate, both online and offline. Think of how you will continue to increase your understanding of counter speech to assist any individual, Muslim or non-Muslim, that is facing racism. Islamophobia is a real thing. It's not made up. We have seen in the media, we have seen in society how it's an increase. Let's not close our eyes to it. How will you as an individual engage in counter speech online? How will you collectively engage in counter speech, both online and offline? And again, like Miriam mentioned, if you'd like to find out more about the religion or more about what Islam is about, for you to get a better understanding on it, reach out to someone. I am sure that you know at least one Muslim individual, whether you work with that person, that individual lives in your community. Start the conversation. As we know, sharing our shared experiences, our stories. You share your stories, they will share their stories, and more times than not, you will find that there is commonality to your experiences, especially as women. We need more allies, and together we can eradicate hate together. I'm now going to pass it off to Kubra to close off this session. I just wanted to take some time to thank each and every one of you for attending today's session. Thank you. Kubra?
Thank you, Natalia, and that was really well done. And thank you to Miriam for presenting as well today. Next slide, please. So we would like you to follow our social media channels. We have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn. So the material that we present today, a lot of it's on our website, D.A.R.E to be aware, and Canadian Council of Muslim Women. This is our website, ccmw.com. So please follow us. And we do have a lot of the videos. It's on our D.A.R.E to be aware that we've showed today. There's, I think, 15 altogether. There's some amazing ones which we did not show today. Next slide, please. And if you're interested in today's workshop, for those, she's on the call, so is Iman. And thank you to both of them and Omana for doing our slides. So you can reach out to these ladies if you'd like to host another one. Like I said, or we mentioned earlier, we actually were funded by the government until March, and now we're continuing because it's such a great outpouring of interest and demand in these programs. So we're very fortunate that we're still able to present them. Next slide, please. And so definitely follow us on our media, our social media. These are, and then There are still some workshops being done across Canada. You can see it on our website. Okay, next slide, please. And we would like to thank all the wonderful people today who made it possible. So that would be today the municipality of Clarington, the towns of Oshawa, and Oshawa Public Library, Clarington Public Library. We were actually approached to do this for them. So thank you to everyone for taking the time to allow us to present, for putting this together, and for everyone who participated today. Thank you very much for allowing us into your homes, allowing us to communicate. And one more thing is, like we shared some personal stories, like I said, this is not all cut and dry. These are our personal lives and we've shared. So we do have a few minutes left. If anyone wants to comment, we would be interested in hearing from you.
I just have a small comment. The reason actually I got really involved in Islamophobia because of one of the incident which happened to me very recently. And that incident, I would like to share that so I was with my children in a wonderland on a weekend, and there was a long lineups everywhere, and we were waiting to get some food in a restaurant. So there were a couple of guys actually who tried to jump into the line, and they were trying to be very smart. Like, I understand they're like 18 years old, 20 years old boys, just trying to be more smarter, which is perfectly fine. But when I try to ask them, like, why are you jumping inside the line? There are people are waiting in a line from the last 2 hours. If anybody had an opportunity to go to the Wonderland in the last 2-3 weeks, there are huge lineups because it just started. So that guy started saying a word, Allahu Akbar. Okay. And I thought, buddy, listen, okay. So let me tell you, I do not have a long beard or something. It's just like I have a very, very, like maybe I was in a shorts or whatsoever. But the point is, how dare a person can say Allahu Akbar in a public just to make me offended? When I'm asking you that, why are you jumping in the line? So instead of saying sorry and getting out of the line, you are saying like words. I don't know, like this is a racism or this is a hate crime. But I really got like to a point that I said, listen, if whatever you are doing, I would have done 10 years back in my life. Okay, I would have dealt it differently. I would have said, can you please jump into the line or something like this? I would not like that is entirely a different way. But to put other person down and saying the racist things like like I can say 100 other things about any religion, but that is perfectly wrong. That why a person dare to say Allahu Akbar when there is no reason to say a word. So then I thought that this is actually nothing more than a hate crime. This is purely a kind that where I should be knowing what my rights here in Canada are. And again, I asked the Wonderland people to speak to the security. I spoke to the security, and I told them like I do not really want to get this young boy in trouble, but he should learn that anything which is related to anybody's religion, you just cannot come in front and say such word like me as a Muslim going to a Hindu festival saying wrong words just to offend them, or any but any religion is 100% wrong. So that was my interest in coming into your presentation and learning into it. And yes, like that was one of my personal experience which I have recently felt in Wonderland. There may be a lot of other tiny incidents like which are related to my profession as a pharmacist. But again, I cannot say that it is related to racism or it is maybe related to religion. But that particular incident when the person said Allahu Akbar in front of 300 people in a line just to make me go away was very, very, very sad for me.
Right. I'm so sorry, Azim, that, yeah. Go ahead, Natalia. Yeah.
So sorry about that, Azim. But you see, when with hopefully with some of the strategies and the tips that we provided today, you would use one of those D's to try to bring more calm to the situation. And as we know, Allahu Akbar means God is most great, right? He may have meant it to be derogatory towards you.
Exactly.
But at the end, what he didn't realize he was doing was he was praising God. He was calling God. He was saying God is most great, right? And sometimes you have to pick your battles, as we said, and ensure it was a safe space to do the discussion. So what you did by going to Wonderland authorities and putting that information in there, that for you as the individual experiencing that was the right thing. If there was somebody else who had observed it and acknowledged what was going on, if they felt safe enough, they could have now become an ally, or as I mentioned, an upstander in this situation. So today we've just given you some of those tools as being an upstander, somebody who may have been in that same Wonderland line and seen this interaction between those youths and yourself, may have had the tools to step in to assist you in a situation like this. And again, when you think of Allahu Akbar, what the meaning of it is, you can actually put a smile on your face, because in essence, he was praising God.
No, Natalia, the thing is, like, what you're mentioning to me is absolutely right? But look, I have actually more. Can I take 2 or 3 more minutes about it?
Sure.
So nowadays, actually, then I got involved into the SAC meetings. You know, I'm one of the treasurers for the schools in TDSB. And then, well, I'm planning to get into a presentation for an Islamophobia for a general public. And I was doing a research where I found out actually that in Toronto, last year in 2021, there are 257 hate crimes were reported. Out of 257 hate crimes, there were 75 hate crimes which were actually related to religion. Right? Looking at the population, the Muslims are here in GTA. There were, out of those 75 hate crimes which were related to religion, only 14 of those hate crimes were reported by Muslims.
Yep.
All right. So the percentage that we are actually standing is extremely low to the population that we represent.
Yes.
You know, so like, I'm not really getting into it. If you want, I can actually share. It's actually even on your CTC, and you can go on the Toronto TPS.ca. Toronto Police TPS. And so I would say is this, that it is extremely important for look, Islamophobia is nothing that what you already mentioned is not only related to Muslims. Any phobia related to any religion should be our fight. All right, any religious phobia is wrong. And I think that we, as like, whatever you guys are doing is doing a tremendous job for the society, but it has to come from a point that why we are only like 10% of the people who are reporting those crimes, who may be facing, like, even on a regular basis, they don't know what exactly hate crime is, what exactly, like, we have done a lot of presentation, like I understand that I'm talking to a women organization, that we may have done a lot of presentation in massages, in churches, everywhere related to the feminism and the protection of a woman. Why we are not doing a presentation and teaching our youngster boys and the girls who are born in Canada that what is your basic right in Canada, and
Take it into the schools.
take it to the schools, take it to the masjid, like any a religion which is only maybe 0.5% of a Canada, if they are reporting 75% of the hate crimes, then why Muslims who are in GTA in such a big population are only 10% reporting the hate crimes? So it's not that I'm in a race, I'm just that my point is that awareness in our people, or our people means in Muslim people, or maybe not only Muslim, maybe in other religions also, is so less that it needs to be really, somebody has to really come forward and talk about it, and has to, a work has to be done.
Azim, this is Firdaus. Sorry, I just want to interject to say that you're making absolutely valid points. And, for this, we are also shifting gears a bit to say we want to do more work with youth. We want to be there more in schools, elementary schools and high schools. We did see that the shootings in Buffalo and the school attack or the school terror that you saw in Texas, both were done, the perpetuators were 18-year-old. It's horrifying to know that such young people have so much hate in them that they are able to commit such heinous crimes. So I totally agree with you, which is why we need to educate our youth more. We need to have these conversations more with youth and with the larger community. And what you mentioned, what happened to you in Wonderland, I myself have been, witness to a lot of things, as a racialized person, right? Like, it doesn't have to just be Islamophobia, but someone who sees that you are brown, you're of, a racialized community, they might think that it is a microaggression, but really it is a hate crime or a hate attack against a particular community or an individual. So I thank you for sharing that, for that courage. And yes, we need to educate our communities more to say what is actually a hate crime and what can we do about it, right? Like, so not only Muslims, but I think that the stats show that 75% of hate crimes go unreported. So what you see from any other community, and it is across Canada, not just in Ontario or the GTA, is that 25% is reported. So what you see, the stats that Kubra and the team shared with you are really not the real stats. If everybody were to report the hate crime that they have experienced, the data would look totally different. But thank you so much for sharing.
So Firdaus and Kubra and everybody else have also pasted that link.
Yep, we see it.
The reference actually I was giving.
Yeah, and that's actually very similar to what we have too. But having these conversations, and we have, for those who knows this, we've done over 3,000 people across Canada. We're having these workshops. This is just the step, and we're so thankful to Clarington and Oshawa, the libraries, Oshawa and Clarington, and the mayors. Everyone getting involved and allowing us to present. It's bringing it out to the open, and we're not only saying Muslims. It could be anyone, being Black, Jewish, anyone who's a visible minority, being a woman, we also face this. So let's just start this dialogue, and work together. And I would like to thank everyone for this opportunity to present today. It was an amazing presentation. Again, I'm very thankful that you allowed us to present. Miriam, do you have any final words, or Natalia, that you would like to say to our audience today?
No, I just want to thank everyone for their time. I mean, that's what's so key, is having that willingness to join these types of workshops and educating yourselves, or increasing your awareness of these kinds of situations. So thank you from me. I greatly enjoyed my time here tonight with all of you, and I hope to see you again in these sessions in the future.
Thank you.
Same here. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a great night. Sorry, Erica. Sorry.
I would just like to close out and say that on behalf of all of our partners, the Municipality of Clarington, Clarington Public Library, City of Oshawa, and the Oshawa Public Libraries, I would like to thank all of you, Kubra, Miriam, Natalia, Firdaus, along with Umama and Iman's support, for sharing with us this evening. And I think being able to connect, and as you shared your personal experiences with us so candidly, it helps with our understanding and awareness, as you mentioned as well. So thank you for sharing and for being so open with us. And thank you as well to all of our participants this evening for your engagement, your sharing, and your discussion. And I believe that we are all walking away with some strategies tonight to be able to be upstanders and not bystanders as we work together to counter hate and delete racism. So thank you all so much for this opportunity. It's been extremely enlightening, lots of resources, lots of tips and strategies, and thank you so much for your time and sharing.
Thank you. And thank you, Erica. You've been so instrumental with Jen and Julie and the others, Melissa, to make this workshop happen. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Take
you
care.
so much, everyone.
All
Take
right.
care.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye.